Sherelle Mendenhall, that's who that is. I'm guessing.
From the Las Vegas Review-Journal, I am Carrie Roper, and welcome to this special edition of Nevada 2022 election coverage. As the clock winds down to the official end of the filing period for this year's local elections, we're recapping some of the key races you want to watch for. And here to break everything down is Review-Journal's political expert, Steve Sebelius. Steve, it's been a long journey for this filing period. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Absolutely, glad to be here.
We're so happy. And you know, throughout your time both here at the Review-Journal and throughout the community, you've seen a lot when it comes to elections. What is the significance for those who are maybe just getting involved? We've had a lot of transplants come from other places, other communities, other states. What's the significance of this year's local election period?
Yeah, I mean, it can be overwhelming. It's going to be a long ballot. There's going to be a lot of candidates, a lot of races. For people to find out about, even finding out what district you're in. I mean, with redistricting, you could have been in a district for a long time, and all of a sudden this year you're in a totally new district. So you've got to get your bearings before you start looking at your ballot.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a little bit of the redistricting. You know, let's take it back for a second to the beginning of the election filing window, which opened last Monday, March 7th, where we saw quite a bit of action coming from candidates ensuring to get their bids in early. We did see Governor Steve Sebelius putting his name in for re-election, Deborah March filing for lieutenant governor, Adam Laxalt filing for U.S. senator. Was any of this surprising to you?
No, I think a lot of people, when they file on the first day, they want to sort of stake their flag and tell everybody, hey, I'm running, and potentially scare off other challengers. It didn't work in most of these cases. Zach Conine was pretty much free and clear until Michelle Fiore decided to get into that race. So it didn't work, but it sort of shows you're eager to be on the ballot and to run for that office.
Like you said, you're making a statement when you go there first
Right.
day and letting everybody know you're serious. You know, as we get ready to approach the final minutes of the election filing period, which closes right at 5 o'clock. We talked about that. It's not 5:01. They're not waiting around. And we're about 2 minutes to 5, so until it closes, I'm not sure if we're going to see too much action coming from, you know, some of the stuff we've already seen. But I think it's safe to say that this year is going to be a year to watch. Why?
Yeah. Well, first you have two huge races, the governor's race and the Senate race, both of which are going to attract outside money and a lot of outside attention. So Nevada's once again going to be not maybe at the center, but near the center. Remember, Republicans need just one seat to flip the Senate, and so that could be our seat. They're also very close to flipping the House, so we have three really competitive districts now, and those are going to be in play as well. Again, a lot of outside money coming there. So those are just a couple of reasons that there's going to be a lot of attention on those races.
Absolutely. Now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the key races, starting with the congressional race for the U.S. State Senate seat. Nevada Assemblywoman Annie Black filing on Wednesday to run for Congress District 4 after originally contemplating running for the state Senate, but then changed her focus.
Sure.
What can you tell us about her and some of the other candidates?
I think she changed her focus in part because of the redistricting and the way that district was changed to make it more Democrat friendly. Switching to the 4th district makes sense for her. She lives in Mesquite. It's a rural area, and there's a lot of rural Democrats in those areas that are very conservative and that may, find some appeal in a Republican candidate. So Stephen Horsford, I think still has the advantage. He's won there several times. He's got more name recognition, but it made sense for her to switch from the Senate race to that race.
Okay, got it. And you know, the race for U.S. Senate shows a majority of Republican candidates, but a couple of other parties represented running, including a Libertarian candidate.
Yeah, there are all sorts of. I mean, you say a majority of Republicans. I think it's all the Republicans in the state are running. There's 15 Republicans at least in that primary. It's going to be a crowded primary. That's probably going to take a whole page of the ballot just for them. But yeah, that race is going to attract libertarians. There's also going to be what they call no political party or nonpartisans. And those folks are going to go directly to the general election ballot. They'll appear, no matter who wins primaries, they'll appear in the general election ballot.
And right now we are just hitting the 5 o'clock mark, which means time's up for anybody who wanted to file. And again, we're going to kind of go through some of the key races that we've seen. But, you know, when this happens, we saw a lot in the last election how all eyes were on Nevada for us, and that was obviously for the presidential election. But when this happens, is there anything that you can speak to in terms of candidates maybe making a statement and going on the final day or waiting? Have we ever seen that happen here locally?
Yeah, just like when you file on the first day, you're making a statement. On the last day, you're also kind of making a statement. Dina Titus, who was the incumbent in the first district, didn't file on the first day or any of the other days until today. She waited until today to file. The last day is the surprise day, you know, when people you don't expect to file. Like Danny Tarkanian filing in the 2nd District up in northern Nevada to run for Congress. Or Crescent Hardy, former Congressman Crescent Hardy from the 4th District, filing to run in the 1st District against Dina Titus. So that shows you not only how those races have changed, but also how you can always still get surprised in Nevada politics.
Absolutely. And one race that is more concentrated, but is going to be interesting to watch, and you kind of educated me on this, which I appreciate, is for Congressional District 1. Why is that a big one to keep an eye on?
Yeah, normally it would only count in the primary because that was such a heavily Democratic district. Whoever won the Democratic primary was going to win, no matter who the Republican was. Well, they've changed that district. They've redrawn it fairly radically. The number of Democrats is roughly the same, but they've added Republicans and nonpartisan voters as well. So that has changed the dynamics of that district considerably. So it makes sense that people such as Crescent Hardy or Carolina Serrano would switch from, Carolina Serrano was running in the 4th District. She switched to the 1st District when she saw the change in the political demographics there. What makes less sense to me is Amy Vilela, who's the progressive Democratic socialist, if you will, running against Dina Titus in the primary. I didn't know that she would actually go through with filing once the redistricting was done. She announced before the redistricting was done, but she filed even though it has been done. And it's much harder for a very liberal or progressive candidate to win in that district than it was before.
Makes sense. And, you know, we mentioned, too, Dina Titus choosing to file today on the final day. And, you know, when she was asked about her potential to debate against her opponent, she had some very interesting things to say.
We hadn't talked about that. Well, I don't know that she'll want to debate me, so we'll see.
Alabama.
So Dina mentioning that, you know, she's not quite sure if her opponent's going to want to race her. It's a little bit of shade, Steve, that she threw.
A little bit of shade. Dina Titus, the queen of throwing a little bit of shade there. She kept people guessing until the last minute whether she was going to run. Even I was getting nervous. Is she going to run or not? And she is. I think Amy Vilela will definitely want to debate Dina Titus. I think she'll do it every day of the week and twice on Sunday if you could arrange it. So that's definitely going to be something that we're going to look for. But I've known Dina Titus a long time. She's a political science professor at UNLV for many years. She was the state senator and the state Senate minority leader for many years. She doesn't take any opponent lightly. I don't care who it is. It could be somebody with absolutely no name. If someone files against her, she takes that person seriously, and she'll do the same with Amy Vilela.
Well, so, you know, we'll see what happens when those two candidates actually meet face to face, and what that looks like now, you know, in us returning to live debate form. And, you know, the big race that everyone is watching is obviously for governor. Let's take a look at really quick at some of the names who are running. You know, a lot of competition coming from the Republican Party candidates. Aside from Governor Sisolak and Sheriff Lombardo, what are some of the other names we'll be hearing that are going to be making a big push this year?
I would watch, as you see on the screen there, I would watch for Joey Gilbert, who is the Trumpiest of all the candidates, to take some of that Trump base. I would also watch John Lee. He's a former Democrat turned Republican running in his first statewide race. Former Senator Dean Heller, I think, has stumbled a little bit in the beginning of this campaign, more than I expected him to. So I think you're definitely going to be hearing all of those names. And you're going to hear the name Tom Collins because Steve Sisolak did not expect a primary, and he didn't expect a primary from Tom Collins, his former colleague on the Clark County Commission, where they clashed on a number of issues, including the tax for more police. Tom Collins has been a vicious critic of Sisolak online, especially on Twitter, and I think you're going to see that viciousness come out. So I don't know if we'll see a debate in that race, but I would definitely be interested in seeing that debate.
That's one where you want to get your popcorn out and make sure you watch those fireworks go
off. And by the way, Tom Collins is a legit cowboy. He is a rodeo cowboy. He's legit on there, Yellowstone style. He's not a fake. That's not a fake hat. That's real.
That's real. And you just mentioned Governor Sisolak vying for another term. The governor has come under a lot of scrutiny during the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of people not very happy with the way he's handled things. Others, obviously, on the other side, very happy with the way he's handled things. And in recent weeks, we did see him, be accosted, he and his wife, by someone who wasn't very happy with what he's done. What is he leaning for this reelection?
I think he's leaning in the right direction. Elections are always about the future. It's always about what comes next. Obviously, he's going to have to answer for his record of what came before and the decisions he made. And I think he's going to make the argument that, look, nobody else was there making these decisions with the information he had at the time. Nobody else knows what he went through to do that. And I think that's a fair point. He's still going to have to, though, justify and answer for everything he did in the pandemic, closing things down, closing the Strip down, which we haven't had no legal gambling in Nevada in decades before he did that. He felt it was the right thing to do. So he's going to have to justify those things. But I think what his campaign is going to be about is about the future. It's about Nevada is coming back. Jobs are coming back. Casinos are seeing record revenue. So Nevada's on the mend, on the move, and going into the future, and hoping to sell people on that vision of the future, which I think is, probably the best strategy he has right now.
Possibly the only strategy as well, it sounds like. And one of those that's challenging Governor Sisolak's seat is Sheriff Joe Lombardo, someone whose name we've heard throughout the years. He's really taking command of this community in many people's opinions, and he's viewed as one of the front runners in the primary, leading in the latest polls that we've seen. Something that stood out to me was that he is yet to take part in any candidate forum or debate. Why is that?
That is, it goes to the heart of his strategy. He's actually executing a very smart strategy. If he doesn't debate, all of his other competitors debate, and they talk about him. And that reinforces the notion that he's the front runner. So he is the one out in front. They're the 7 dwarves arguing, 7, 15, however many dwarves, arguing amongst themselves over the issues. He stays above the fray. He doesn't have to answer for his record. He doesn't have to answer for anything until the close of filing today. He said he'd debate after the close of filing, so it'll be interesting to see if he actually does that. But what's impressed me about Lombardo is for somebody whose political experience has only been in running for sheriff, something he really knows well at the lifetime spent at Metro and in law enforcement, he is more political than I think people realize. He's able to thread the needle on a number of different issues, sometimes be able to take both sides of an issue so as not to offend any segment of voters. And he's doing that very, very carefully. I think he has really good consultants. They're telling him to do the right things, and he's executing a fairly well-run campaign so far. No mistakes yet.
There's strategy behind everything. And the big news coming out just yesterday was centered on Las Vegas Councilwoman Michelle Fiore. She originally announced her intentions to run for governor in October, but then she was another one that made a last-minute change and filed to run for state treasurer instead.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's like you don't want to go to the beach where everybody is, right? Because it's too crowded. She went to the beach where there's a lot fewer people. The more exclusive beach in the state treasurer's office. There's only 2 Republicans, one of whom is her. So she has a much better chance of getting out of that primary 50-50 as opposed to 1/16 of a shot in getting out of the Republican primary. So you can understand why she did that. Now, I don't know that she has a particular experience in that. She has run businesses before, but there's been questions about how those businesses have run, the finances of those businesses. So those questions she's going to have to answer in that campaign. Certainly against Zach Conine, who is one of these folks where he shows up everywhere. Everybody likes him. He's very earnest. And so I think it's going to be an interesting general election race, assuming Michelle Fiore makes it out of that primary.
Absolutely, and we're off to the races. As we mentioned, just a few moments ago, the time is officially up for any candidates hoping to get their names into this year as the filing period just closed. No big action that we saw, happening there in the final minutes aside from this morning's filing. Steve, just overall thoughts, we have a big year ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, a very big year ahead. We will have at the Review Journal, we will have a voter guide both in print and online. We're going to ask the candidates to answer questions. We're going to write stories about each of these races so people can find that information online. So we encourage everybody to register and vote, whether you vote by mail, whether you vote in person, whether you vote during early voting. It doesn't matter when you do it, it just matters that you do it. And the Review Journal will have those resources to help you do that.
That's perfect. I'm definitely going to be leaning on those resources, though you've educated me a lot through this process. Steve, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely, glad to do it.
We're going to be following this, as you mentioned, throughout the election period coming up, and we're going to be really having some more conversations too, and hopefully being able to chat with some of those candidates, bring that information to our viewers. So really appreciative for everything you and the team are doing.
Sounds great.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you for joining us today. In the meantime, please visit reviewjournal.com to read all about all of the candidates. And thank you for joining us here for this special Nevada 2022 election coverage. We're going to continue to bring more content just like this to your screens. Also, be sure to catch all of the latest headlines weekdays on 7 at 7 a.m. and 7 at 7 p.m. And if you have a Roku device, just search Review Journal to download our channel. From the Las Vegas Review Journal, I'm Carrie Roper. Have a great weekend, everyone.